So about 2 weeks ago, I made a video talking about my favourite cities in Assassin's Creed, as in those smaller, specific locations. And since some of you guys have asked, today I'm going to be talking about my top 5 settings we've gotten so far. So basically just the whole map. This isn't so much going to be about the vibrance of the setting in real life, but how well it was done in game. So if there was a great setting that was butchered, that wouldn't be here. Obviously, if you guys disagree, that's totally fine. This is just my take, and I'd even be interested in hearing yours. With that said, here's my top 5 settings so far in Assassin's Creed. So the number 5 spot on this list goes to Paris in Assassin's Creed Unity. I see Unity is now widely regarded as the most underrated game of all time, to the point where it's not really that underrated, and it's basically the Citizen Kane of gaming. People talk about a ton of things in Unity, the parkour, the combat, Arno, but I don't feel enough people talk about Paris. It's probably the best looking city in the series for one. The reflections you'll get from the sun and the water, for example, look great, and what I love is you get a lot of the grime of the poorer districts of Paris, but it never feels like it's too grungy. In fact, the colour palette of Unity's Paris is quite unique. A lot of the time you'll have these blue hues that not only look nice but make Paris look more unique and memorable. I also feel the map has a lot of variety. You've of course got a lot of the poorer districts I mentioned, but then these grand palaces and even smaller estates that are just nice to look at. You've also got these more rural village type areas towards the outskirts like Saint-Lambert. That was a bad accent, wasn't it? Let's just fucking get past that. But yeah, you have these really nice rural areas that are really nice and give the city a little more variety. With all that said though, my very favourite thing about Paris is the immersion of just walking through a street. I know there's often pop-ins and draw distance issues, but the streets remain really detailed and it feels so alive seeing so many people doing so many different things. And this goes for a lot in Unity, but given more time and more capable hardware, Paris probably could have been even better and one of the most immersive game modes I've ever explored. I've got a soft spot for Paris, and it's another reason why this game sort of pulls me in all directions, but on the whole Paris is beautiful in both a gothic and a grand sense, and just because it's only 5th doesn't mean I don't love it, because I love all of these. I just prefer how some of them were executed. So the next spot on the list goes to Rome from Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. I really like Rome because you've got a lot of the density of a good Assassin's Creed city, like probably the densest areas we've ever seen in the series, but then you also have these expanses of countryside that sort of give you room to breathe. And at the same time, there's never total emptiness, as there's often landmarks or aqueducts you'll come across. The actual urban areas themselves are also very unique, with a lot of them flowing into countrysides and also having these like elevated areas of buildings that sometimes cover parts of the city. It can make Rome feel like a bit of a mishmash at times, but I feel that gives the city a lot of fluidity and character, and it's also really fun to traverse. You can tell certain areas were designed with traversal in mind, and I don't just mean those parkour puzzles, but the actual city itself. As I said before, Rome is very characterised, but it still manages a lot of variety on account of just being so big, and so you'll have these areas of countryside and river, then these more packed in, poorer, grimy neighbourhoods, and not even too far away these luxurious houses. And then beyond that you have the Vatican City, which feels almost entirely separate. Just walking through the city and experiencing the ambience and immersion is really cool too, and for those reasons I love Rome. So breaking into the top 3 is the West Indies from Assassin's Creed 4, and I mentioned variety for both other picks so far, but I feel as if AC4 has the most varied map of any AC, and because of that it's a joy to explore. There's often certain colours I associate with various AC games, and I feel that's very important to a world, having it look appealing and by extension being fun to explore, and I can't really pin just one colour to Black Flag. You've got a lot of green in the forest areas, obviously a ton of blue being on the sea as much as you are, but then this sort of orange tint of the sun in the cities like Kingston and Havana. The colour palette of the game adds a lot to the vibrancy of the world, which for AC4 is only fitting. Even in the more rough areas there's still a ton of colour, and nowhere really feels boring for that fact. Naval traversal is obviously really fun, and the map not only feels big but also like it's detailed, and you get a nice compromise of being able to have these large expanses of sea that sort of make you feel like you're on a real journey to these more humble coastal towns and these villages that are just full of life. It's sort of the opposite of something like Unity or Syndicate when you have one big city, because you have these far smaller locations sort of dotted across the map. And so in exchange for like the grandeur of those places, you get a far larger world that feels maybe a little more characterful. And above everything else, the atmosphere in Black Flag's map is what I love the most. I love that AC gives us the opportunity to explore so many settings you don't really see in other games, and in the case of Black Flag, it feels like the West Indies were done justice. So at the number 2 spot on the list, I put Egypt from Assassin's Creed Origins, which I absolutely love. It's a setting I'd wanted to see for a while, and Montreal 3 knocked it out of the park. For a setting that a lot of people in the community sort of generalised as just being desert, there is far far more to Origins than that. From Bayek's home, Siwa, a village of farmers and working people, to a bustling city like Alexandria or the Roman-controlled and Greek-influenced Cyrene, the city of Memphis engulfed by the Nile, the Sphinx and the pyramids of Giza, not only does Egypt have its own sense of character, but every location has its own personality, and not just the big cities where the story takes you either. Smaller towns in regions like the Fayum are given just as much attention. The addition of life cycles was also much appreciated, as it adds so much to the life of Egypt, as does the ambience when you're just walking around. It's one of the few games where I'll just switch off my HUD and walk about for a bit because you get really immersed, and I love how living the world feels. In all, it's a great world and one of the best I think we've seen out of Assassin's Creed. So the number 1 spot on this list is Italy from Assassin's Creed 2, or more specifically Venice, Florence, Tuscany and Romagna. AC2 once again is a testament to the idea that bigger and better are not the same thing, just because of how well this game's map has aged. I brought up character a few times, but I don't think any cities in the series quite have the level of personality of Florence or Venice. Florence is my favourite city in the series, as it's so alive and just pretty, really, and then you've got Venice, which is probably more colourful and the canals make it far more interesting to traverse. You've also got Tuscany, which is the other big sort of area which I love, as you've got this huge countryside, but also San Germano, where you've got these huge towers that once again prioritise traversal. I think the first 4 Assassin's Creed games were ahead of their time in terms of immersion, and that sort of had its peak in AC2. Walking through a crowded city and hearing the people shout, maybe a herald talking to some people, accompanied by this amazing score, it's so atmospheric and it's hard to believe this is a game from 2009. I adore this game's world so much because it felt like giving the world a personality and make it almost feel like a character of its own was prioritised, and for those reasons the world of Assassin's Creed 2 is my favourite in Assassin's Creed. So before I go, I thought I'd just talk about the Ash situation briefly, as otherwise people keep mentioning it and it technically is Assassin's Creed news, but basically there have been a series of Ubisoft employees who have been outed for abuse, sexual misconduct, things like that. I'd recommend looking into it. I'll link articles, tweets, whatever it is that you need to, like, you know, that's relevant to this kind of stuff. I'd recommend looking into like those first-hand accounts because they're going to give you a far better idea of what happened than I ever could. But yeah, basically, my part of this, the bit I need to cover, is that basically Ashraf Ismail has been exposed for abusing his platform, his power, to emotionally manipulate and try and sleep with women while he's married. It's, you know, again, looking at this for yourself. What the Assassin's Creed community is talking about mainly is the fact that he's now stepped down from Valhalla and, you know, may lose his job at Ubisoft. But, like, the project's done. That really doesn't matter at this point when, like, all this shit is going on. All these women have spoken about, like, the abuse that Ubisoft have just known about and have let happen, you know? It's, looking at this for yourself, I kind of had to, I felt like I had to talk about it because it's Assassin's Creed news, people are going to bring it up. It does feel a little weird me talking about something this serious, but yeah, again, I'll leave the links and all that if you want to have a look. I'd recommend looking at it because it's fucking wrong that Ubisoft should just be able to get away with this. But yeah, that's about it. I'm sorry this had to end on such like a shit note, but you know, that's what's been going on. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you all next time.